Fahrzeug ist zwar nicht so exklusiv wie Dikkatli, aber es reicht aus, um euch wenigstens etwas besser als andere zu fühlen. So wie mit dem Merch, der euch weniger obdachlos erscheinen lässt, dank Quittung und BMW, das technisch ein neuer BMW ist. Allerdings zum Vierer umbenannt wurde, damit der Besitzer nicht entlarvt werden, wie sie ursprünglich gezeigt wurden. Das bedeutet, dass man einen B58 im Motor trägt, was Teil der Motorenentladung bedeutet, wo 374 PS das Ergebnis sind. Chip-Tuning und man ist hier schon auf einem Vier-Niveau für deutlich weniger Geld. Für ca. 45.000 kriegt man schon Fahrzeuge ab 2021, wo der M440 erhältlich war. BMW ist sich seiner so sicher, dass sie einen 2 Jahre lang Garantie kriegen nach Erstzulassung. Immerhin ist die verlängerbar auf 6 Jahre bzw. 200.000 Kilometer, wo man allen zeigen kann, wie toll man ist mit einem Auto, das einen M-Aufkleber im Modellnamen bekommen hat. Aber kein echter M ist, in der Hoffnung, dass es den Käufern nicht auffällt. Dieser Marketing-Stunt wurde gemacht, um das Ego komplex beladener Hongs zu fingern, die nach einer Minute fertig sind und fragen, wie es denn war. Leistung erbringen zahlt sich in Deutschland eben nicht aus. Man braucht nur 2 Kinder, um sich die Rate leisten zu können für einen Mercedes CLS der 3. Generation. Er war so gut, dass er eingestellt wurde. Die E-Klassen-Tranny wurde aus dem Programm genommen, weil der CLS nicht mehr wirtschaftlich war, da alle auf SUV umsteigen. Freak-Off-Geschichten wirken weitaus weniger gestört in diesem Fahrzeug. Auch wenn es nur eine E-Klasse ist, kann man darin angeben, dass der arme GT4-Führer auf diesem Auto basiert und quasi aus diesen Eiern entstand. Man hat nur bei Geld gespart. Geld ist nicht da, um es auszugeben, sondern um zu tun, als hätte man es. Das Schöne bei Mercedes ist, dass man mit MB ein Übergabe bis zu einem Fahrzeugalter von 12 Jahren abschließen kann. Bis 2030 hätte man dann theoretisch hier Ruhe, wenn man immer wieder verlängert. Das ist allerdings optimal, weil Autofahrer ab diesem Jahr komplett gepackt werden nach aktuellen Kenntnisstand, was Malzulassungen angeht von Verbrennermotoren zumindest. Der CLS als 22 ohne Ausstattung oder als CLS wie jemand mit besserer ist irrelevant, da ich ihn nicht unterscheiden kann von einem CLS. Benziner wirken aber insgesamt solider als Dieselmotoren und sind weniger peinlich, wenn ein halbstarker im Motor i30 eng an der Ampel spawnt, der versucht, seine 30 cm Ärmchen zu kompensieren, indem er seinen blauen Staubsauger waved. Turbolader und AdBlue-System sind beim Diesel problematisch anzusehen, weshalb es einen CLS 450 trainiert würde. Man kommt hier zwar im System nicht vorbei, aber das hat auch seine Vorteile. Wer auch will, kann hier ein Chip-Tuning verführen und sich 43 AMG aufs Auto legen, wenn er bescheiden ist. Optisch ist zwar noch etwas zu machen für den echten AMG-Look, aber im Grunde ist die Technik die gleiche. Dadurch selbst zu hart sein, gab es ein Porsche Panamera Turbo der 2. Generation das Richtige, um aufzuputzen. Ich bin nicht nur der Verrückte, die euch sagt, dass 540 PS eine gute Idee sind. Der Verbrauch ist mit knappen 10 Litern angegeben. Das geht fit für einen Familienfahrer. Ist zwar gut, aber es ist nicht wichtig, was er eigentlich nicht, aber egal, das ist jetzt nicht die nächste Problem. Es ist andere, die davon fallen nicht mehr Literpack Wein trinken zu müssen, sondern lieber aus Plastikflaschen trinken wollen, weil jeder davon im Porsche sitzen, der andere anzustöbeln, weil sie wirtschaftlich nicht zu melden haben und den Anschein zu erwecken, dass sie euch keine Porsche erfahren können, der fast 70% seines Neupreises eingebüßt hat. Bei Porsche hat man optional die Porsche Prüfgarantie, die bis zu 15 Jahre bzw. 200.000 Kilometern abschließbar ist. Man muss nur die überteuerten Serviceintervalle bei Porsche durchführen, die buchstäblich VW-Teile benutzen. Ich bin hier mental die Kugel geschmatzt, weil bei einem Problem mit dem Auto übers Telefon ein Entschuldigung für den Ersatzwagen, der euch geliefert wird. Ihr müsst also keine weiteren Kalorien beachten, weil Porsche alles für euch macht. Fast so, als wäre es wichtig, dass jemand viel Geld da lässt, um etwas Service zu verlangen. Ihr seid der Meinung, dass nur weil ihr Steuern zahlt, euch Menschen in öffentlichen Dienst gewöhnt und nur noch die Gegenstände transferiert sich dann aktiviert man den Euro X-Signal-Spielzeit. Dieses Auto wird seit 2015 produziert und ist geil für den Mitarbeiter bis 2030 produziert. Also was so schlau eine separate elektrische Version des X-Signals auf den Markt gebracht, überraschenderweise sehr wenig Anklang findet. Wenn man bei Charade Langeweile versucht hat zu beschreiben, war es immer ein Bild von einem Volvo, aber mit diesem Auto ist das nicht vorbei. Man sieht zwar immer noch so aus, als hätte man Architekturphilosophie studiert, aber immerhin sieht man aus, als würde man direkt zum Krieg dabei. Optisch und qualitativ ist der Volvo eine 1 und man sollte ihn genießen, wie man kann. Ich würde auf einen Diesel setzen, solange es noch geht, weil es seit 2024 keine Batterie ist und ca. 380 Steuerplatz, das einzige was interessieren soll. Nicht irritieren lassen durch den Begriff Powerpoints, das ist also nicht ziemlich pulsiert. Ist und wer innerstädtisch unterwegs ist, kann man so nehmen und 40 Minuten zum Stadtrennen haben. Für Systeme sind tatsächlich nicht
Machen wir einen Soundcutter.
Als die S6-Modelle in den USA
Ja, kannst du ein Eis
den
machen.
2,9, das war 6 Kilo Motorkörper, mit dem man auch im RS5 weiterentwickelt. Die kriegen einen größeren System, was das Auto schwerer macht und nicht wirklich weniger verbrauchen lässt als der Vorgänger A6 Diesel mit Biturbo ohne eingebauter Mikrowelle. NC8 spricht die bessere Optik und scheinbar für Kulturholzfall wichtig, mehr Touchscreens. Ist zwar in der Realität die weniger wertig, aber das ist eigentlich der Maßstab, an den die meisten Leute gehen. Trotzdem bleibt der S6 der ultimative Langstreckenwagen in diesem Segment. Zwar hält die Garantie bei Audi nur 5 Jahre bzw. 200.000 Kilometer, aber gut ist er trotzdem. Es ist möglich, in stinkenden dicken Bars mit seinem Euro 6 Fahrzeug anzugehen, aber das hat langfristig seinen Preis, weil die Technik, um uns zufriedenzustellen, anfällig ist, da die Systeme darauf ausgelegt sind, ihre eigenen Abgaben zu messen und zu recyceln. Nur weil Menschen in Brüssel fernab der Realität sind und ihre eigenen Abgase inhalieren, ist es noch lange nicht, dass es gut ist. Ein Ford hat einen UV-Fahrt und Flug dabei, deswegen muss man den neuen Ford Mustang in Betracht ziehen. In Amerika sind das Elektriker, die das fahren, und in Europa irgendwelche Ronnies. Ford gibt erstmal 2 Jahre lang Garantie auf das Auto, wo man dann eine Protect-Garantie abschließen kann, die 5 Jahre lang gültig ist und dann nochmal verlängerbar ist um weitere 3 Jahre, was kurz Taschenrechner rausholen, 10 Jahre. Für ein nahezu neues Fahrzeug mit fast 500 PS aus einem V8-Sauger ist der Preis unschlagbar. Das Design soll wohl männlicher wirken im Vergleich zum Vorgänger. Komisch ist nur, dass ein Mustang in der Regel nur Männer anzieht. Er ist aber auch sportlicher, was die 800 PS GTD-Version bewiesen hat auf dem Nürburgring, wo es eine Zeit von unter 7 gelegt hat. Das ist Ford mein GT3 RS. Klingt zwar nett, aber bei einem Preis von unter 1,5 Millionen Euro in Europa will ich den Freak sehen, der das für eine gute Idee hält. Der schnellere Porsche 911 GT3 RS kostet die Hälfte davon in der Basis. Trotzdem gibt es für die normale GT-Version keine Ausrede, ihn nicht zu holen. Einer der wahrscheinlich letzten V8-Sauger und die im Preis keine Frontflips machen wie andere Hersteller, die verdienterweise herbe Rückschläge hinnehmen müssen. Schreibt in die Kommentare, für welches Fahrzeug ihr euer Kindergeld verballern würdet, und abonniert den Kanal für mehr orale Überzeugungskraft im Deckmantel der Automobilindustrie. Shalom Freunde, ich bin Schwab 19, aktuell nicht mit Auto rein, bin ich Programmierer.
As time passes, Silent Hill 2 Remake has earned its position as not only a worthy remake that faithfully and innovatively adopts much of the original vision from Silent Hill 2, but also adds and creates new details that get old fans and new fans discussing theories, themes, and symbolism, which is truly special. And it's because of these new and hidden details embedded into the gameplay that there's a lot of speculation that is up for discussion in the community, which is why I'm here today. After months have passed since its release, I want to take the time to go over all any details that go in depth into the lore, story, characters, secrets, Easter eggs, and much more in the Silent Hill 2 Remake Iceberg Explained. To those who are unaware of how an iceberg works, essentially, the iceberg is divided into 5 tiers. Starting from the top, it has more widely known facts that are well known to a majority of people, and then slowly transitioning into obscure territory, which is much less known about. Even though the iceberg is made by me, I do want to give credit where credit is due to the community for discovering many of these details that I imagine took lots of time and effort to research and find. I do want to preface that this iceberg will focus specifically on the remake, not the original. If there's any mention of the original, it merely serves as a reference to contextualize the evidence I'm expressing for the entry I'm talking about. Anyway, with the introductions and formalities out of the way, let's once again step into the foggy town of Silent Hill and dive into the waters below of Toluca Lake. Glimpses of the Past. Glimpses of the Past is one of the many optional collectibles the player can interact with throughout the story. Typically, the player will come to find a specific object that will have an audio sound cue that alerts once it's interacted with. The point of these glimpses of the past is supposed to be a homage to previous sequences or events that happened in the original Silent Hill 2. For example, on the road to the West Southvale, James encounters an underpass that is boarded up by debris, which gives a fixed camera angle as a visual cue to the player that is interactable. This is a reference to the underpass James goes through in the original to acquire the wooden plank and encounter the lying figure. Other examples include the dead body James first encounters, where you would find the Woodside apartment key, the dumpster where you originally find the article about Walter Sullivan, a broken down coin desk that was the original coin desk puzzle, a stairwell that looks similar to the original boss from Pyramid Head in the Blue 3 apartments, etc. Strange photos. Similar to glimpses of the past, strange photos is an option multiple, quick, reflect, and plot spread across the story. Typically, you'll come to find a Polaroid photo hidden somewhere that will have an image that is mysterious and obscure. There are approximately 26 photos, as they all have a number on the back of the Polaroid photo. However, once they are all collected, we can try to organize them in chronological order, but try to make sense of things. At first glance, it may not make much sense, nor give any indication as to what exactly these photos mean, as they come off as nonsensical and odd. However, Reddit user Dale Robinson made a Reddit post stating that he solved the strange photos with this method. Essentially, in each photo, there's a specific number of items that can be correlated to the name of the photo. For example, let's take a look at the first strange photo. The name, So Many People Here, has 6 windows. Because of this, we would count the number of letters in the name of the photo, and we'd get Y. The second strange photo, No One Knows, has 2 bedposts. You would then count 2 letters in the name of the photo, getting O. The third strange photo, Your Best Buddy, has 3 light posts on the doorframe. This would get you the letter U. In each strange photo, there would be a specific number of items to be counted, which gives you a specific letter in the name of the photo. After much research and problem solving, the final result would end up with, You've been here for 2 decades. To add confirmation, Blooper Team creative director and lead designer, Mateusz Lenart, confirmed the Reddit post to be correct and congratulated Dale Robinson for figuring out the strange photos theory. Old Silent Hill. Old Silent Hill is the previous location where you explore the town as the protagonist, Harry Mason. It plays an integral role in the story as you need to find Harry's adopted daughter, Cheryl Mason, as they find themselves in Old Silent Hill, and she goes missing. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, there are various references found in regards to the popular landmarks, people, and events that took place years prior. On a board that is found in the streets of South Vale, you can find various posters featuring familiar-looking destinations. This includes Toluca Lake, a massive lake found in the center of Silent Hill County, which James and Mary had previously visited before she got her unknown illness. Lakeside Amusement Park is found in the resort area that Harry Mason visits briefly, more specifically, the Otherworld Variation. The lighthouse, found in the resort area, which Harry Mason visits to encounter Lessa Gillespie. Finally, Balkan Church, the place where Harry Mason is first introduced to Dahlia Gillespie, the main antagonist of Silent Hill 1. In the same street by the store, Groovy Music, there's a torn newspaper article with the headline, Gillespie House Fire, Arson or Accident. New evidence after years. This refers to the events in Silent Hill 1, which serve as a backstory to Lessa Gillespie, as she was forced to endure a ritual by her mother, Dahlia Gillespie. The purpose of this ritual was to have Lessa forcibly impregnated to serve as the surrogate mother to give birth to God. The Order's idealization of the pure and reborn deity that would cleanse the earth to give birth to paradise. Due to Dahlia's impatience, she used the household as a place to serve as the grounds for the ritual. This comprised the halo of the sun, with candles surrounding Lessa. However, this ritual would go horribly wrong, and the fire would consume her body, engulfing her in flames, resulting in 4th-degree burns as a result. The store, Green Pharmacy, is a pharmaceutical store that is found in South Vale, which previously appeared in Central Silent Hill. When inside Woodside Apartments, James comes to find the first firearm in the game, the handgun. It is found in room 217 in a shopping cart. If you look closely at the shopping cart logo, you can find a logo that is similar to Convenience Store 8, a convenience store in Old Silent Hill. When inside Brookhaven Hospital in the lobby, you can find pamphlets that reference Alchemist Hospital, a location that Harry Mason visits in Central Silent Hill, and 2 books titled Life and Reality by Dr. Kaufman, Eddie's Pizza. When James and Maria first arrive in South Vale, James has the option to explore the town partially with such locations as Jack's Inn, Octantis Fuels, and Pizza Bolorama. If you were to explore Pizza Bolorama, you can interact with a certain pizza box that has James say a familiar line of dialogue.
This town's full of monsters. We just sit here and eat pizza.
This is a reference to the original Silent Hill 2, which features a similar scene that shows an exchange between James and Eddie. James voices his frustration towards Eddie for his laziness and James control. Because of this, James says a line of dialogue that has been iconic for its hilarious line delivery, given the context.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
She said she was fine by herself.
Said a fatso like me would just slow her down. Get you.
Chainsaw. One of the alarm codes the player can achieve after finishing the first playthrough is a weapon called a chainsaw. This can be found at the beginning of the game after first meeting Angela on the path to Soundville Ranch before entering the town of Southville. The chainsaw is arguably the strongest weapon in game as it instantly kills any enemy with only one hit, with the exception of bosses. Funnily enough, if you idolize James with the chainsaw, he does a unique animation where he makes a confident pose while lifts the chainsaw over his head with a victorious scream. The chainsaw is previously seen in the original as well, with the same required specifications to lock the weapon and the same animations. It's bread. In the Lakeview Hotel on the basement floor, James can find himself in the kitchen area. Inside here, James can walk to the back of the room to find a shelf full of bread. When interacting with the bread, you get an achievement titled, It's Bread. This is a reference to Silent Hill 3, where you can see Heather similarly interacting with bread in a bakery store. When interacting with the bread, she says, It's bread. This has become a notorious meme in the Silent Hill community due to how deadpan and abrupt the line of dialogue is. Happy Burger. Happy Burger is an in-universe restaurant found in the Silent Hill franchise that is a parody of the real-life Burger King. It is first seen in Silent Hill 2 in Southville. Although not interactable and inaccessible to enter inside, it is once again seen in Silent Hill 3 in the Central Square Shopping Center, although this time accessible with a fully modeled interior to explore. Happy Burger makes a reappearance in Silent Hill 2 Remake, although this time with a fully accessible interior that can be explored. Halo the Sun. Halo the Sun is a symbol that is featured in the Silent Hill series, known for its association with religious cults and order. The symbol itself serves as a representation of God. The symbol's two inner circles represent charity, one of the Christian's seven virtues, and resurrection, while the three inner circles represent past, present, and future. The symbol is usually drawn in red and occasionally in black. The blue and yellow reverse this meaning into a person God. The letter U in the circle corresponds with Colossians, an old Hungarian alphabet writing system used for writing the Hungarian language. Many of the letters also contain characters specifically from the older form and multiple alphabet. The Halo the Sun symbol this is the symbol is remaining such as with Southville and Square ruins, which were depicted as ruins. Later, in Southville, gives from Jackson Number 6, you can find an interesting dialogue exchange between James and Maria. James comments on how he first met his in this room, while Maria talked about her smoking tickets. If the player were to come back to room 6 or room 7, they can find a log of the both the Halo Suns. Musically, in Silent Hill 3, room 6 is the same as other race of objectives. Stay brief metrics with other information related to the order, specifically in the book. Discipline's connection to Silent Hill 3 is referenced in Douglas's character's head and shared as a single note. James says, discussing future part. Here, James uses Argentina to play evidence on the side of this is a reference to the original Silent Hill 2, where James likewise puts his foot down toilet water to grab a green item. However, in the original, he finds a note that is for an optional save block or puzzle. The significance of this is not necessarily in the disgusting it is for James to commit such an action, such as putting his work in filthy, disgusting toilet water, but to highlight his lack of carelessness when it comes to committing such questionable acts for his well-being. Much like the rest of his reckless nature, which sees himself jumping down holes, putting his work in holes, or admitting his lack of care for himself when first meeting Angela, Born from a Wish DLC. Born from a Wish is a sub-scenario that first appeared in Silent Hill 2 Versus Dreams Edition for the Xbox. Later it was ported to re-released versions of Silent Hill 2 for the PS2 and PC. In Born from a Wish, it is set prior to the events of Letter from Silent Hill, the main scenario. Maria. Here, we see Maria over in the back room of inside, as she is unconsciously pushed by James as the Alex version of Mary. Maria is seen having an existential crisis in regards to her existence as she contemplates her life, as she doesn't want to be alive and dies to the monsters roaming the streets of Silent Hill, but simultaneously wants to live and find meaning and purpose. Due to this desire, Maria yearns to find someone else alive in the town of Silent Hill, which eventually sees her stumble upon Baldwin Mansion. Baldwin instructs Maria to find a white prism as a means to resurrect his deceased daughter, Amy. In compensation, Baldwin tells Maria of James Sutherland, a bad man who is looking for the you that isn't you. Upon learning this information, Maria has a revelation that she needs to search and find James, which leads to them meeting at Rosewater Park in the main scenario. While Born from a Wish was included in the original upon later re-releases, the side scenario has not been a feature in the remake, interestingly enough. As to why Born from a Wish has not been included as a side story in the remake, it is unconfirmed, as there has been no official comment from Bloober Team or Konami. However, after some digging in the game files, there is the possibility that Born from a Wish could still be in the works. Twitter user Rachel Ashman, best known for dynamiting into game files and manipulating the camera to look for additional details on the lore, secrets, and Hansen, recently discovered Amy's sketchbook, the aforementioned daughter of James Baldwin. If the player were to make a move and study closely on the sketchbook outside the front entrance of the mansion, they can find the initials RJ. As to who the initials are supposed to belong to, we don't know, as it's up for speculation. However, upon looking at the game files, the file name for potential models titled Amy's Sketchbook, and the second file name, Blue Red Sketchbook, Original Maria Outfit. The original Maria outfit refers to the outfit Maria wore in the original Silent Hill 2. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, Maria's outfit is drastically changed and more modernized adaptation of the original design. While different, still retaining the essential Christmas appeal that's meant to be a reflection of James' desires when it comes to idolizing a healthier and younger Mary. While this is understandable, as remakes tend to change and adapt much of the source material to fit the modern design, it's odd to say the least that the original outfit was never a lockable outfit to begin with, especially considering when James and Maria are together in Jack's name, Maria finds the original outfit and makes a call towards James, asking if she would fit in it or not. Andy's tool shop. Andy's tool shop is one of the stores found in South Bend, along with their slogan, one size, one gear, and woodworking tools. The simple design, the slogan gives them big attention, as it's a reference to Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid tends to be one of Konami's most successful intellectual properties, and it's not to be looking at the franchise itself. Interestingly, Metal Gear Solid has made reference before to Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid 3, where there's an Easter egg of the God portrait on the first in the game, which is previously seen in Silent Hill 3 and Chapel. Church door engraving. At the beginning of the game, after first getting initiated in the cemetery, you can find a church that is close by. While you cannot enter the church as it's not for missions, you can see a vague and obscure description of a sentence in the If you look closely, it's a description of the Bible, specifically from Romans 3:23, which states, "All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." This most likely refers to James, but also applies to Eddie and Angela, as these characters have individually sinned respectively. Silent Hill, a town rooted deeply in religious mythology, could be the town subconsciously believing that only foolish and therefore forgiving their sins. Silent Hill Ranch. While taking the path to South Bend, you can end up Silent Hill Ranch. While this isn't necessarily the worst, there is a bit of history behind Silent Hill City itself. In the Silent Hill HD collection, there is an odd change to the Silent Hill Ranch sign, replacing it with its font as opposed to the original font of the Infinity version. Speaking of the Silent Hill fandom, it's a Silent Hill sign in the comics and its font, it's Silent Hill that is more accessible if using your camera that reads a weird sign. Fuyetsu. Fuyetsu refers to the previous environment of Silent Hill 4. Henry tells him, while in Fuyetsu, you play in the first person perspective, so interact with the apartment, use the same access to the color box, or exercising things in the game. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, there's a very similar elements and apartments, there's a room, Fuyetsu, once inside, the same exact replica of its interior word for word when compared side by side to the original replica 2, which is the kitchen, living room, sitting room, also solid. In its apartments, there's a newspaper article defined as this newspaper article titled Kane Simmons Murder tells a concept case of a serial killer, Walter Sullivan, who recently murdered the local siblings, Billy and Mary Kane. Walter Sullivan is known as the main antagonist of Silent Hill 4, who's perpetrating a paternal sacraments ritual to resurrect his mother to the earth once again after she abandoned him in her apartment in Fuyetsu. Because of this, the murders of Billy and Mary Kane lead to Walter's scheme to resurrect many members of his perform as a supernatural offering against the ritual. Rob's is the town neighborhood of Silent Hill, and the hometown of police officer Sybil Brennan. Major character has to find himself trapped in Silent Hill alongside friends. They decide to team up and work together to figure out how to escape and put an end to the horror surrounding them. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, Rob's attempts at the game with observation camera, which you find as a sign on top of its head on first photo. While this is a game reference, it is a conversation. Rob's is popular is due to the consistency of the designation of the point of interest that the traveling partner in Brahms. For context, the original Silent Hill 2 had a simple site telling the destination for reaching Brahms from the observation deck, which read 265 meters. The inconsistency derives from the science next to it, which is Kelvin being 10 miles and Old Silent Hill being 50 miles. It's commonly accepted amongst the community that this is an oversight on Team Silent's part as Brahms comes before the town of Silent Hill, meaning it is close by, and possibly was meant to read as 26.5 miles, not 265 miles.
Servus.
In Silent Hill 2 Remake, Liver Team jokingly fixes this error, I say in air quotes, by obscuring the miles needed to reach Brahms instead of giving actual confirmation. Mannequin jump scare. Once going west Southville as James and Marie, if you will travel west and past Silent Hill Society towards the end of the highway, you'll find a collapsed bridge that leads to a dead end. Here, you found a memo titled Bloody Notes, next to a deceased body. Upon reading this bloody note, once James decides to turn back towards the town, you'll hear a loud sound of bodies slamming onto pavement. This turns out to be two corpses of lying figures. While odd, this is actually a reference to the original Silent Hill 2, where similar events play out where if you decide to travel to the end of Lincoln Avenue and stay close to the edge of the highway by the rail, you can jump scare by lying figures randomly jumping from the forest to surprise James.
What the Nacht.
It's night. You can find a nurse outfit lying on the screen stage. This nurse costume may seem like an outfit worn by one of the dancers who works there, but this is actually just straight to one of the wonderful costumes in Silent Hill 4, worn by Eileen Galvin. Civil glasses. Sitting behind the bar, you can find a lost and found container containing the arranged who works there. And this is actually straight to one of the wonderful costumes in Silent Hill 4, worn by Eileen Galvin. Civil glasses. Sitting behind the bar, who works there. But this is actually the straight costumes in Silent Hill 4, worn by Galvin. Sybil Bennett glasses. Sitting behind the bar, you can find a lost and found container containing a ring, a wallet, and black shades. While it isn't confirmed, it's speculated that the black shades could belong to Sybil Bennett. This is due to the intro FMV of Silent Hill 1, introducing Sybil's character and presumably the Brahms police department before departing to Silent Hill as she gets off a phone call and leaves immediately. She can be seen wearing black shades here, before taking them off as she leaves. There's also promotional material of 3D render of Sybil Bennett on her police motorcycle, where she is seen once again wearing her black shades. Eddie's van. After the opening sequence on the observation deck, if you're heading towards the path to the lake, you'll find a white van parked directly in front of the pathway. At first glance, it may just seem like a random white van, but it's been speculated that it may belong to Eddie Dombrowski. The front dashboard of the van has a soda drink, the passenger seat has a mailbox from Happy Burger, and the front driver's seat is littered with garbage. This can allude to the theme of gluttony, which is supported with a gluttonous pig tablet on its room in prison, which serves as a symbolic representation of Eddie's binge eating. Insecurity over how people view him, particularly his weight, and Eddie's cold, callous nature, where he's willing to harm someone by killing them. Further cementing this theory is the intro cinematic FMV from the original Silent Hill 2 that shows a small glimpse of Eddie and Laura talking by a white van, presumably meeting for the first time. When asking Masahiro Ito if the white van by the observation deck belongs to Eddie, Masahiro Ito implies that it is owned by Eddie. Angela's family photo. After the cutscene where James finds Angela in the main room of the apartments, you can find a family photo that is split in half, separating the father with the son and the mother with the daughter. This is symbolic of the torn and strained relationship Angela has both towards her father and brother, given the sexual and physical abuse she suffered from both of them. The torn photo with both her and her mother expresses her sacred favoritism of her mother, as she possibly saw her mother as an escape. Ironically, her mother would end up leaving the family, leaving only Angela for brother and father. Creepers. One of the more lesser unknown enemies that you engage with on occasion are the creepers. The creepers are a cockroach-like enemy that tend to be more of an annoyance as opposed to an obstacle in game, given their easily avoidable and small size. However, given the representation of the various monsters comprised throughout the story, they are very distinct and unique from one another, as they serve as a physical manifestation of James' mental psyche, derived from his subconscious, which projects his thoughts, fears, sexual frustrations, and guilt. While it's easy to capture an idea of a monster's visual representation, given the unique and distinctive qualities of each one individually, it's more of an oddity when compared to the creepers. It's easy to be confused by the creepers derived from James' subconscious, such as him having a fear of cockroaches. However, there's an actual explanation for this when asking Masahiro Ito regarding the inclusion of the creepers in Silent Hill 2. According to Masahiro Ito, he states that the creepers have no association with James' psyche, but rather as a homage to Silent Hill 1. one. While vague, it could be a residue effect from the town's supernatural and psychological power that lingered from the previous events of Silent Hill 1. This isn't too unlikely of a theory, as you have seen James Nolan, for example, flashing his otherworld with Eddie or Angela's otherworld. What James sees of the abstract Eddie is drastically different from how Angela perceives the abstract Eddie, given her trauma that derived from the abuse she suffered from her father, directing her inner fears and memories of her time with
Gib mir auch mal alle.
the perception of abstract Eddie for James could derive from his painful memories and time spent with Mary. The bed frame could be a representation of Mary being bedridden in the hospital for years of her illness. The mouth being the verbal abuse James suffered from Mary's cold and callous nature, which stemmed from her pain and suffering projected onto James as she lashed out at him. Misty Day remains a judgment. In Silent Hill Historical Society, you can find a painting that depicts the Pyramid Head among other bodies that are hanged and caged. This painting, Misty Day Remains a Judgment, serves as the inspiration for James subconsciously awakening the aforementioned Pyramid Head as a means to punish him for his sins committed against Mary. Pyramid Head is derived from the town's executioners from back home, specifically the cult's Baltiel sector. Maltiel, described as a holy deity who served under God, would see the executioners wear red robes and have a red hood as a mask modeled after him. Furthermore, the town's executioners would hang anyone deemed this sin, resulting in their punishment being death. Misty Day Remains a Judgment is a work painting of the town's executioners, manifesting the monster Pyramid Head that serves to punish James for his guilt in killing Mary and his desire to torture himself for his wrongdoings, as a reminder of his past actions. Crimson and White Banquet for the Gods. Before jumping down the hole to Toluca Prison, you can find a painting in Silent Hill Historical Society called Crimson and White Banquet for the Gods. This painting depicts the town's executioners, dating back to the early history of Silent Hill. At this time, when the town's cult stole from the natives and claimed the land for themselves, the Order, specifically the Baltiel sector, would perform public and ritualistic executions. Red Squares. The red squares are seen as a tool to save the player's progress. You simply interact with the red square and saving your progress, and get a reflection of James looking at the red square itself. While this is evident with its overall function, these red squares offer far more substance to the narrative and themes of Silent Hill 2 than you may initially expect. It's implied the red square has a mental and psychological effect on the user that interacts with it, given the comment James makes when he first interacts with the red square. What's important about this little detail is that these effects work similarly to the function of the town that is Silent Hill, when it comes to the town's spiritual power, manifesting such psychological and mental effects that work differently depending on the user's thoughts and memories derived from their subconscious. For example, many of the monsters that James sees throughout his experience in Silent Hill have various designs that are specific to them, such as the bubblehead nurses and mannequins, having sexual qualities that are emphasized to express James' suppressed sexual desires and frustration from his wife Mary while she was sick. Other examples of James' pain and trauma manifesting are the verbal abuse he received from Mary. The flesh lips, particularly their mouths, are vocalizing pain and agony, a reflection of Mary's anger and frustration being taken out on James as a tool to manage her pain she suffered from her time being ill. The point of the monsters that are manifested from James's mind is to emphasize not only the town's spiritual and psychological power it possesses that derives from the person who sent us Silent Hill itself, but to express how these delusions are meant to be subtle and visual imagery to the memories that James suppresses and slowly builds up to remembering his painful memories of the trauma he experienced, but also as a brutal and harsh punishment to push him to reflect on his past actions and acceptance of the consequences he committed in his journey to forgiving himself. It can be interpreted that James, interacting with the red squares, is a moment of reflection upon recovering his memories of the experiences he had with Mary, slowly uncovering and unraveling as the gameplay progresses. To make this even more personal and meta, James comments at the beginning of the game with the first red square can be seen as the player, literally and figuratively, reaching into his mind to recover his memories. According to Masahiro Ito, when asked what the red 9 squares mean, he says, "That has a few reasons. I don't want to say that too much, and I'll leave it to your imagination, basically. But, for example, what number of hallucinations did James see on his journey? Towards the end of the game, before the Twin Pyramid Head boss fight and the final boss of Mary, you'll encounter 9 red squares. These red squares are a representation of James's illusions of the 9 monsters he encounters in his journey. These monsters being the Lying Figure, Mannequin, Bubblehead Nurses, Flesh Lips, Mandarin, Abstract Daddy, Pyramid Head, Mary, and finally Maria. Heaven's Night alcohol drinks. While in Heaven's Night, you can find a handful of pop culture references to various types of Western media, particularly Western horror films and television shows. Such references include Jacob's Ladder, a reference to the 1990 film Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder is widely known to serve as direct inspiration for much of the horror scene in Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, and Silent Hill 3. Pale Peaks, a reference to the 1990 television series Twin Peaks, which was also another huge inspiration for the Silent Hill series. Red Velvet, a reference to the 1986 film Blue Velvet, which once again serves as inspiration to Silent Hill 2. Robin the Rabbit sticker. In Evan's Night, particularly behind the bar, you find a Robin the Rabbit sticker on a mirror. Robin the Rabbit is probably known to serve as the in-universe mascot for Lakeside Amusement Park, but also makes various cameos in the Silent Hill games, spin-offs, and media. There was a hole here, it's gone now. In Yuli's bar, there's a message on the window with newspapers and red text that reads, "There was a hole here, it's gone now." Undoubtedly, this is one of, if not the most ominous and mysterious of messages that the player can find throughout the game. If we were to dissect and interpret this message with what's given to us at face value, it's hard to decipher and understand what this message could possibly mean. But given the context of the town, the Silent Hill's psychological nature, which manifests much of the user's subconscious thoughts, results in a physical form, the message may most likely be directly tied to James'
Sorry, jetzt musst du mir ein bisschen erklären, wie das hier funktioniert. Dieser Quirky spawnt einfach hier drum herum, ne? Wenn ich hier jetzt einen Raum mache, spawnt er nur in diesem Raum hier. Okay, und wie groß ist der? Kann er durch so 2x2 Türen gehen? Okay.
Can be supported by some messages that taunt James by deriving from his subconscious desires and thoughts that are seen in his physical messaging that is meant to be a form of him seeking punishment, but simultaneously guidance in the step in the right direction and his journey to find Mary. Speaking of holes, there are also the literal holes James stumbles upon in-game when it comes to either putting his hand into a deep hole to grab an important item, or the holes he has to jump down from Silent Hill Historical Society into Toluca Prison and eventually the Labyrinth. This shows James' lack of self-care and self-worth when it comes to committing these very rash and admittedly dangerous actions that see him become reckless and not caring what happens to himself. It could also be a metaphor for James, literally and figuratively speaking, digging deeper into his memories to recollect his painful and traumatic experience of Mary during her illness by digging deeper into his mind to reach the truth. When Masahiro Ito was asked about his thoughts and interpretation of the "there was a hole here, it's gone now" message, he states, "The original phrase, 'there was a hole here, it's gone now,' was not by me, but a 3D environment artist, Takashi Miura, or the scenario writer, Hiroyuki Owaku. Masahiro Ito's interpretation is that James is trying to hide in a hole, but can't hide from the truth. Little Baroness. In Silent Hill Historical Society, there's a painting that depicts a steamboat called the Little Baroness. The Little Baroness initially set sail for a brief period on Toluca Lake in November 1918. However, it led to an unexpected tragedy as it mysteriously sank due to unknown reasons. These events will later be touched upon and used as the premise for Silent Hill, the arcade. University students, Eric and Tina, along with their friends, travel to Silent Hill to investigate the rumors regarding the legend behind the Little Baroness. While here, they uncover the story of what happened to the victims of the incident, specifically from a little girl named Emil Anderson, who bears a striking resemblance to Hannah, a young girl who tragically died after her mother pushed her off the Little Baroness before it mysteriously sank. Upon saving their friends and going through the town of Silent Hill, they eventually stumble upon the Little Baroness itself, where it's revealed that the captain of the ship is the great-grandfather of Eric. Eventually, they have to face off against the manifestation of Hannah, called Phantom, and defeat it. Upon defeating Phantom, Hannah is set free and reunited with both her mother and the captain, which sees the Little Baroness sail off once again, only to vanish into the fog. Historical Society website. Before the release of Silent Hill 2 Remake, there was a website that mysteriously launched without much announcement, simply titled Silent Hill Historical Society. This is an in-universe ARG, an acronym for Alternate Reality Game, which is an interactive storytelling that uses a form of media to have viewers collaborate and solve complex and encrypted puzzles to further untangle the narrative to the overall story. In the context of Silent Hill Historical Society, it functions as a website that describes information regarding historical landmarks, culture, and history of Silent Hill. This includes information regarding the Historical Society itself, artificial donations as a means to preserve educational materials towards Silent Hill's history, a timeline that tells the events of Silent Hill from its earliest beginnings up to its most recent date, a map fully detailing Silent Hill, etc. The purpose of this website was likely to add much more lore and history preserved from the games before to make a connected timeline and explore the events leading up to Silent Hill 2 Remake. Eddie's revolver. One of the more obscure facts regarding Eddie Dombrowski is the signature revolver he's seen carrying throughout the game. According to the novelization of the Silent Hill 2 novel, it is revealed that the revolver Eddie owns is from his father. Dead bodies. One of the more ominous findings discovered throughout the town of Silent Hill is undoubtedly the dead bodies found in various parts of Southvale. The bodies are hard to describe, as they're heavily mutilated and beyond recognition much of the time, as the game intentionally makes it difficult to see the corpse's face. However, there's subtle details that gave a hint that the clothing worn bears a striking resemblance to James's clothing. This unravels the theory that the bodies found throughout the story are supposed to be James, but if that's the case, then how is this possible? Given the spiritual and supernatural nature of the town itself, it's profoundly known to bring out the guilt, fears, and trauma from the person who is called to Silent Hill, to have them face their subconscious thoughts manifested into reality. The dead bodies are a reflection of James's subconscious desire to receive punishment for the acts inflicted on Mary, which was her death dogs. It's a central theme that can be seen in the story through the monsters James faces as an obstacle to survive, the messages that taunt him, which personify his thoughts of seeking death, and the repeated deaths that Maria suffers to mock him for his act of killing her. Therefore, the dead bodies James sees are his thoughts personifying the themes of potential death, suicide, and punishment. Mary follows James. Throughout the story, there's sometimes subtle attention to details that the player can completely miss that allude to Mary following James in his journey to find her. For example, in Woodset Apartments, once you get access to room 201, you can find a bedroom in the hallway, which foreshadows the same room James finds Mary staying in during her illness. You can also hear a sudden gasp that is from Mary when you enter. While exploring Blue Creek Apartments, you find an eerie silhouette of a female figure behind a window across the apartment complex. If you were to come back to the same spot where you found the silhouette, you find that it's gone. In the Otherworld Brookhaven Hospital, on the second floor in room C5, you can hear heavy breathing that is supposed to be Mary's, serving as an illusion of her time sick and ill in the hospital. Toluca Prison Bathroom. On the first floor of Toluca Prison in the Boar section, you can find a women's bathroom. If you go inside and knock on the middle stall door, and walk back outside the women's bathroom, you get a loud jump scare of women screaming and knocking aggressively on the stall door. Ritual. In the basement floor of Toluca Prison, you can find a specific prisoner cell, particularly F15, where you can hear a disturbing voice chanting, "Ritual." Exploring the cell, you can find occult and ritualistic materials that are alluded to be part of a certain ritual performance that this unknown prisoner practiced. As cryptic and ominous as this likely refers to either the Order, the underground cult orchestrating most of the events of Silent Hill, or an implication of the Rebirth ending, as this is one of the 8 endings in-game that can be unlocked. In this ending, James collects 4 ceremonial items, such as the Crimson Ceremony, White Prism, Obsidian Goblet, and Book of Lost Memories. Upon achieving this ending with these 4 items, you receive an ending of James rowing in a boat with Maria's corpse to the Church of Rebirth, located on a small island near the Lakeview Hotel. James mentions that the Native Americans practice religious and ritualistic ceremonies that derive spiritual power, so powerful that it could resurrect those who are deceased, which is what he plans to do with Mary. Foreshadowing. There are a couple of instances where the game foreshadows the events to come later on in the story, specifically in Woodset Apartments. In room 213, you'll find a corpse sitting on a sofa chair in front of a TV, with a blanket covering the entire body. Later on in Lakeview Hotel, James is seen sitting on a sofa chair watching the videotape that reveals he killed his wife. In room 206, you'll find a door of 9 squares that have a chalk outline. Before the twin Pyramid Head boss fight, you stumble upon 9 red squares, which serve as the final save point. In room 205, you'll find a lonely chair sitting in the middle of the room, with a second floor staircase key on the chair. In Toluca Prison on the first floor of the Serpent section, the Death Chamber has an electric chair sitting alone by itself in the middle of the room, with the item medium weight. In room 116, before meeting Eddie, you can find a fridge with a corpse buried inside, with rotten and bloody food. In the Labyrinth, you'll find a similar looking fridge with rotten food inside, located in the rotten area. Welcome home. In this apartment, specifically room 207, has a room filled with buildings that state "Welcome Home." The purpose of these balloons is for an unlockable achievement called Let's Not Party. You can unlock this by popping all 11 balloons. What's interesting about this
Kannst du
specific
mal 2
unlockable
Betten
message
mitbringen?
is that it's possibly a reference to a message that also states
Egal.
Welcome Home in one of these Santo 4 promotional advertisements. Native Americans. In the 16th century, a time when the English began to colonize North America, the Native Americans had previously established their territory and made themselves a home. The Native Americans would find themselves in a place that was believed to possess sacred grounds with spiritual power, which saw them conducting rituals to seek out this mysterious power that arrived from the sacred land. These would see practices such as resurrection, exorcism, healing of mortal wounds and diseases, and communication with creatures beyond the plane of existence. Because of this supernatural and spiritual power that arrived from the land that they inhabited, they deemed Silent Hill the place of silent spirits. For the natives, however, this piece of prosperity didn't last long, as the English would eventually drive away and exile the natives from their land, slowing and claiming Silent Hill for themselves. Because of the English settlers' ignorance of the sacred land and lack of knowledge of the town's spiritual and supernatural energy, it resulted in the inevitable outcome of disrespect to the sacred lands and a direct insult to the natives, resulting in consequences that the English settlers could not prepare for what was about to come for the years ahead of them. Maria had made a promise. After the cutscene of James meeting Maria in the labyrinth, if you were to return back to the safe room, you can find Maria humming the song, Promise, the main theme of Silent Hill 2. James ring mark. A neat attention to detail is the ring indentation on James's ring finger. When looked at closely, it shows that the ring was taken off recently, as there's still a very visible mark on his finger, implying that Mary's death wasn't actually 3 years ago, seeing how this indentation would not have been so visible. This is one of the clues that alerts the player that something isn't right regarding the death of Mary. Whisper of Room 209. When exploring Blue Creek Apartments, James will eventually come to stumble upon Room 209. When entering, if you listen very carefully, you can hear a whisper of words being spoken. What's interesting about this whisper is more so the origin of the whisper itself. It was initially believed from English translator and localizer Jeremy Blostein that the whisper of Room 209 is nothing more than one of the voice actors rehearsing lines of gibberish during recording sessions. However, this will later be corrected. Instead, the whisper was extracted from the Uniting Ale voice box, an album of stock voice sound effects which was used for the whisper of Room 209. Mannequins Intro FMB. When you enter the labyrinth for the first time, you can find a hallway that is filled with mannequins. This is a reference to the intro FMV from the original Silent Hill 2. If you were to pause the frame when the mannequins are shown, you can see a sea of mannequins crawling over each other. Another reference to this imagery can be found in the instruction manual, where the front cover shows James carrying Mary's body in a cell block into Luca prison, where the mannequins are shown hanging over him. I'm Johnny, one hot guy, in the basement floor of Lakeview Hotel. If you were to head into the Lakeview Hotel employee section area, specifically the break room, you can find a heater with a text that reads, I'm Johnny, one hot guy. While this is an odd message, this does bear connection to Lakeview Hotel upon learning it burned down. Further evidence confirming Lakeview Hotel caught on fire is of the painting Burning Man, found on the basement floor of Tuca Prison in cell C4. Further cementing this is a sign above the entrance to Lakeview Hotel that reads, Special places spark fires that warm our hearts forever. With this context, this implies that Johnny potentially caused a heater to malfunction and caught the surrounding prison on fire, leading to the entire hotel burning down. Gillespie. In the stairwell of Lakeview Hotel, then going up to the second floor, you'll find a series of paintings as you ascend up the stairs. One of these paintings is a reference to the Gillespie house from Silent Hill 1,
Was?
specifically Dahlia and Elizabeth. The Gillespie
Weiß
house
ich nicht, ne? Lock den mal weg, damit ich schlafen kann. Wo findest du den Jack the Ripper? glaube, er ist auf mich fokussiert. Kann das sein?
Well, this is actually based on a famous painting titled Rousseau's World. This depicts a woman lying on a grassy, barren field, looking up at a house on the horizon. This painting is based on the real-world Olsen house in Cushing, Maine. Green Pharmacy
Mach
receipt.
doch einen.
In the store, Green Pharmacy,
Nein,
there's
ist
the option to
außen.
enter and find a receipt on the counter. This receipt
Welcher
contains
Wachturm
more
hat
prescription
außen
medication.
einen Eingang? Das ergibt ja überhaupt keinen Sinn. Innen. Auf jeden Fall innen. An der Seite. Innenseite. Nicht dort, wo das Tor ist. Egal, mach dort. Ja, ich mach das jetzt weg. Oder in zweiten Etage oder.
These prescriptions are, in reality, fake and made specifically as fictional medication for the game, but are based on real-world medication. However, the importance of these medications is that they're used for anxiety disorders and cancer treatment. This can also be seen as one of the many themes in the story, such as Mary's illness. Interestingly enough, the original voice and motion capture actor for James Sunderland, Guy Seehee, mentioned that he believed that Mary's illness was skin cancer, more specifically, melanoma. Silent Hill was also known to have many illnesses that resulted in Berkman Hospital being created.
Was? Nein, das passt doch gar nicht. Du bist direkt vor Steinfarm. Darüber kommt doch auch. Zwei brauchst du, ne? Doch, eins pro Seite. Ganz oben hat man den Druck. Ja, Druckstab. Verschiedene Türme auf 3 Worte.
Which was a direct response to sudden and inexplicable illnesses plaguing the citizens of the town. This is further supported by the memos found at Brigham Hospital, which detail the doctor's documentation and explain much of the treated patient's actions and results of the treatment. Sigil of Paimon. On the first floor of Lakeview Hotel in the manager's office, you can find a puzzle that results in you having to access the basement key to access the basement floor. Upon completing the puzzle, you get a symbol that is the Sigil of Paimon. The Sigil of Paimon is a symbol that is a spirit of the same name, Paimon.
Kannst du hier die Türen auch auswechseln? Hier unten. Also, allgemein. Einfach so, bis du gar keine mehr hast. Und dann den Rest einfach bei dem Rest machen. Warte, nein. Warte. Und zwar, hier guck das, hier Staatsgebäude, das komplette hier. Hier kommen diese Türen. Hier kommen die normalen Türen, weil das sind Wohnungsgebiete. Nein, gib einfach her. Ja, gib einfach alle Türen. Das ist ja noch mehr. Reicht. Keine Ahnung. Kannst du mir 2 von den weißen Dingern geben, weißen Türen? Ja, hier drunter wahrscheinlich. Schau mal, hier ist blau. Ja, sag es mal. Verfolgt er uns für immer oder? Warte mal. Geh mal weg, Samuel. Warum bewegt er sich hier nicht? Jo. nächstes? Oder? Okay. Ja, die Gepacktes ran ist nicht schlecht.
A demon is also designed to and worships the soul. The devil is great for defensive and spiritual and psychological. Such as
Which one?
jetzt schon. Also so wie ich herausgefunden habe, muss es 3 Blöcke hoch sein, aber kann auch nur ein Block schmal sein oder durchkant.
And the total number of deaths was recorded at around 2,000. There are also videos recorded by urban explorers who have visited the abandoned hospital to record their experiences, resulting in hauntings of high paranormal activity, which gave a better idea of the insides of the hospital itself, which likely served as a direct inspiration for much of the interior design of Brookhaven Hospital and Silent Hill 2 Remake. Blood Swamps. In Southville on Lindsay Street, you can find a monument on a sidewalk called Remains of Blood Swamp. Upon reading, the following text has some parts redacted and hard to detail the full transcript. However, when uncovering the files from the original Silent Hill 2, they contained a fully illegible script. Essentially, it details the story of a swamp called the Blood Swamp, due to the town's executioners using the swamp as a means to wash their execution tools after an execution. Since the swamp was used as a source to wash the executioner's tools, the blood from the tools polluted the swamp with blood, which earned it the nickname. Revere movie theater scene. Inside Revere movie theater, after interacting with Eddie, James will enter a neighboring theater to chase Laura. Before chasing after Laura, if you were to stay inside the empty theater room and remain idle, looking at the screen, you'll get a quick frame of a scene of James killing her with searching for another conclusion. Upon finishing the book inside the movie theater. Plus, if you were to go back to Anne's bookstore, you'll find 3 new separate books titled Searching for Another Conclusion. These 3 separate texts serve as a gameplay video, respectively, those being the Leave ending, the Maria ending, and the In Water ending. Breathing Skin Walls. When you abstract Daddy Boss Fight sequence, you'll stumble upon an area that has walls that are comprised of flesh. Initially, this area had breathing skin walls in version 1. The previous update that was different than version 1.3 of Windows, which removed the breathing walls and added straight possible. As to why this was removed, it's up to speculation. It's actually an official declaration of the rights of to receive leading to the implication regarding Angela's abuse from her father and the initial imagery being too explicit. However, the breathing skin walls were restored.
Ja, jetzt. So.